we show, what salat we show, what adab we show. On that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires His people. It is because of the qurbani and the sacrifice and the struggle of the majba, the gathering, that this talk takes place. Our work is ijtimai, our work is collective work. Our work is not an individual work. It doesn't depend on an individual, it depends on collective work. So because it's collective, everyone together, their input is. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see that level of sacrifice, that level of qurbani collectively when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make decisions. From the Ummah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see that level of sacrifice. Upon that level of sacrifice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make decisions. And this is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It happened with Sahaba, it will happen with the believers until the day of judgment. When the Sahaba made sacrifice and struggled for the sake of Allah's deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala waited. Their sacrifices were gathered, they reached the level that Allah desired, and upon that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spread the wings of Hidayah. So this is why we gather here. It's not just about listening. The technology, the speaking, the speaker can reach even outside the building. We have sources where the voice should be transmitted the other side of the globe if you want. But this is not the maqsad. The talks of qurbani, the talks of sacrifice, they pierce into the hearts of people. That's why Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was told to call towards the Kaaba, call towards the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one is here to listen. No one is here to listen to my talk. How is this talk going to reach people? So when we give sacrifice, when we give struggle, when we make struggle for the sake of Allah's deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that voice or makes those things even travel in the atmosphere, in the water, in the streams, in the houses, in the villages, in the cities, in the continents, in the oceans, in the forests, in the jungle. That talk did. And respected brothers, the sacrifice of Ibrahim alayhi salam was such that that voice even reached Alam Allah. So this is why, respected brothers, our ta'alluq, our connection is not just with hearing with our ears. Our connection, our sitting here is the hearing of the heart, listening by the heart. This is why we have to sit attentively. So everyone will listen, inshallah. Sitting will become correct first and then our listening will become. On this, the door of Amal will open. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Respected brothers, friends, elders, ulama, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made success and failure for the human being something of importance. The human being, insan, he doesn't want to be unsuccessful. In every way, in every form, in every avenue, the human being wants success. So there are two types of success. One success is that of akhirat, and one success is that of this world. The success of akhirat is apparent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran, whomsoever is saved from eternal hellfire and enters into Jannah, he is successful. And this is the most triumphant success. This is the open success, after which there is no failure. But there is a success of this world. And the success of this world is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives that human being, whether he be male or female, whether he be young or old, whether villager or urban, whether a person is rich or poor, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give that success to that individual who brings a life of iman and amal. And for him or her, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will promise for them hayatan tayyibah, a life full of contentment, happiness, peace, tranquility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised a life of peace and tranquility, that hayatan tayyibah, for the people who bring iman and amal. Respected brothers, that eternal bliss, that bliss and that happiness and that peace and tranquility is what everyone, 8 billion people approximately on the surface of the globe, they are looking for. Whether they be the richest of people, whether they are Muslims, whether they are non-disbelievers, whether they believe or disbelieve, Everyone wants this way of life. Everyone wants that peace of heart. Everyone wants contentment. And that contentment and peace of heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was only attached with deen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran to the nearest effect that listen with the ears, listen attentively to the effect that I have kept the contentment of the hearts only in my dhikr. There is nothing of this world that can fulfill man's ultimate desire. Everything in this world doesn't have the capacity to fulfill the desire of the human being. The only things or the place where man's ultimate desire will be fulfilled is the akhirah. Not the place. This place is not the world to fulfill our desires. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not kept or has not given the worldly attributes or has not kept the materialistic things of this world the capacity and the capability to fulfill man's ultimate desire. It's not there. This is why when a person turns away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and breaks the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing that because of those things he's trying to catch or he's trying to get or he's trying to attain, after which there will be some sort of benefit, there is some sort of satisfaction, there will be some sort of desire that will be fulfilled. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not kept those things there, first and foremost, after the breaking of the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what happens is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala straight away, He takes the peace of heart away from that individual. The heart becomes worried. The heart is filled with anxiety when the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And when the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fulfilled, when the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fulfilled, the first thing that the believer will get is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fill his heart with peace and tranquility. This is why, respected brothers, first and foremost we have to understand where our real benefit is and where our real harm is. Where nafa is, where nuksan is. The benefit and harm of this world, to the eye we see that because of this event I will get a certain harm coming towards me. But no, we have to understand what has come to me through the avenues of the ghaib and the unseen, that after these events, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though on the exterior and apparently it is looking like I am going into nuksan, I am going into failure, or I am going to be in loss, in those events Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us success, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us benefit. And this is what the lesson of Iman is about. La ilaha illallah. That we have to negate every system of this world, where we see things happening from, where we understand things to happen from, when we attribute because of event A, event B will happen. This happened, so that happened. Respected brothers, 50,000 years before the creation of heavens and earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the pen. The pen was asked to write. The pen asked, "Oh my Lord, what shall I write?" He said, "Write destiny, taqdeer, to happen until the day of judgment." Everything that is going to happen to us, good or bad, has been written. And at the end of the hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is narrated to have said to the effect that the pens have written and the inks have dried. Where we will die, where we will be born. How much money we will have, how many children we will have, how many grains of rice we will have. Everything of this world is predestined. Respected brothers, this is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. He has all control of every affair of this world. Sickness and cure is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Life and death is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Poverty and wealth is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All these conditions, respect and disgrace, is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of any means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do how He wants, whichever avenue He wants, whatever time frame He wants, whichever place He wants, whenever He wants, however He wants. There is no one to question the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be and it will become. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things according to His hikmat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things according to His wisdom. And there is no one to question the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone He made fat, someone He made thin, someone He made poor, someone He made rich, someone He cured, someone He gave sickness to. This is all in the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The distribution of gifts, ni'mats, is in the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, brothers. He is not in need of any means. Although He utilizes the means to make things happen, but He is not in need of any means. In the avenue and in the environment of respect, He can disgrace an individual. In the avenues and environments of disgrace, He can respect, and in the avenues of respect, He can disgrace. So this is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Namrud was the king of the time. He was sat on the throne. Everyone used to come to his kingdom. And whenever people used to come into his kingdom, everyone used to prostrate according to the ritual at the time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never removed him from his kursi, never removed him from his throne. This is how powerful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept that individual on his throne. To overthrow someone, to take him away from his power, for someone to force him to lose his authority. Different things of this world have to happen. But for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He left him on his chair. What did He do? Not a mosquito, lame mosquito. That lame mosquito went up the nostril, and when we went up this nostril, the same people who used to come and prostrate in front of him, they were the same people who are getting slippers and whacking him on his head. Disgrace is not where we see disgrace coming from, and respect is not where we see respect coming from. Real respect and real disgrace is in the khazan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is in the treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Respected brothers, on the other hand, there is Yusuf alayhi salam. And Yusuf alayhi salam is that individual who got betrayed by his brothers, got thrown in the well, sold as a slave, false accusations upon him. Hurdle upon hurdle of disgrace. One event of disgrace, being betrayed by the brothers, being thrown into the well, another event of disgrace, being sold as a slave, another event of disgrace. False accusations upon him, he ends up in the dungeon. Even though the baby is becoming his witness that he is not him. So event upon event of disgrace, but within these events of disgrace is embedded the respect of Yusuf alayhi salam, and in these events Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts him on the throne of Misr. So this is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And the stories of Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam, the reason we have to talk about them, the reason we have to discuss them, and the reason we have to keep reading about them, and they are mentioned in the Quran again and again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, this is what happened with this Nabi, this is what happened with this Nabi, this is what happened with this Prophet. Why? It's not fairy tales. 100 years, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. It's not a history book. It's a book of lesson. So insan up until it is hudan linnas, is the guidance of humanity up until the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept this. And these stories are there for our lesson. But who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, how powerful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that being who can make things happen where there is no expectancy to happen. Where we don't expect things to happen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things happen from there. This is how powerful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. When He comes to protect, no one can harm. When He comes to harm, no one can protect. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the night of Hijrah, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu comes, he goes from his house. So when he leaves his house, there are so many youngsters ready, na'udhu billah, with the intention of slaying Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, killing Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If there were 100 youngsters surrounding the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, 200 eyes are watching him. And how were the houses in the days? They weren't big mansions, they were very small huts. So how can a person escape from that little hut or that little house? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and he says to the fact that take the soil, take وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. In Amal is the protection of the Ummah. In Amal is the protection of the Ummah. The problem is we have put disgrace upon ourselves because we have left those resources and those avenues which have 100% yaqini, madad and help and assistance. So this is why he threw that mitti, he threw that soil on the eyes, towards the eyes of these, and they became temporarily blind. Who is the power who gives the eyesight? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had eyes, they cannot see. So he slips away. Imam Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu go into the cave. And when they reach the cave, they stay 3 days, 3 nights. Over 72 hours. 3 days, 3 nights in the cave. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu goes inside, he cleans everything up so that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam can have rest. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is taking rest, at the foot of the cave, at the entrance of the cave, what is there? Few things amongst which is a spider's web. Now the weakness of a spider's web is known. If a wind blows hard, there is a lot of wind, then the spider's web will break. So something which will break with the wind. If a person does this, it goes away. And in the inside of the cave is the leader of all Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, the one whom which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the entire universe for, the sky and the earth and everything. And with him, after the Anbiya, the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who stepped foot on the face of this earth, is Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. These two individuals in the cave, and at the foot of the cave, the most influential people or important people in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are being protected by the weakest of things in this world. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that if they see us, they were at the foot of the cave, if they see us, if they look down, what is going to happen? They will be able to see us. You just have to look down. So fear not. When there is two, the third is Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. Respect brothers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected. So the stories of Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam are for our yaqeen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how He protected and how He gave freedom to Musa alayhi salam and the people of Bani Israel. When he went into the mountain to receive nubuwwat, he had the staff. And because he was Kalimullah, he starts talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, what is this? What are you holding? He said, this is my asa, this is my stick. I take the leaves for the fodder for the animals. I take support on it. All the benefits of the asa, what is he doing? He is narrating all the benefits of the stick to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this thing of benefit, this source of benefit, that you see as benefit, you have experienced as benefit for so many decades, for so many years. This source of benefit, now you put it on the floor. When you put this source of benefit on the floor, this source of benefit became a source of harm. So now Musa alayhi salam became scared. When he became scared, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him that you lift this stick up, you pick the snake up. So obviously he's scared, it's a snake. It's an object of harm. There's danger there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, he started picking the snake up from the tail end. So no, we don't want you to pick the snake up from the tail end. We want you to pick the snake up from the head end, from the mouth end. So this is where the venom is, this is where a snake poisons. But as soon as we have to realize who is the one who is ordering us to do that hukam. When we will put ourselves and when we will fulfill the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not worrying about the benefit and harm of events, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make those sources of harm benefit for us. And if we, na'uzubillah, break the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those avenues and those asbab which are of benefit, Allah will put harm in them. This is why Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, as soon as he lifted the snake up from the head, from the mouth end, it became the asa. Now this is the first time. Second time, many times it must have happened in his life. I'm just recording some events. Second time, the magicians came and they were so confident of their victory that they even dressed like Musa alayhi salam. When we will imitate the good and when we will imitate the haq, they say, our elders say, because they imitated Musa alayhi salam, even though they were on the wrong, the imitation helped them to guidance. Today we know we are right, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is right, the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is right, is the most correct way of doing things, is the most beloved in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know this, that we are rejecting it. People out of mockery and out of just saying we are so confident we are going to win this battle, or we are going to win this fight, whatever contest you want to call it. We are going to win this contest. Because of that, out of mockery, we will wear the clothes of, like the clothes style of Musa alayhi salam. 200, whatever the magicians did. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, with the amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he puts the staff on the floor and it gobbles in one luqma, one morsel, all the other. Because that it was, whatever it was. So this is the second time we hear. First by the mountain, second by the magicians. Now remember, where our zehen goes, where our mindset goes, because the human being psychologically it looks for benefit and harm at every instance. And he attributes things according to his experience. What is the experience? So when Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is going with the Bani Israel, and the army of Pharaoh and Pharaoh are behind him, what is in front of him? The water is in front of him, which is a source of halakat, destruction. Behind him is the army of Pharaoh and Pharaoh himself. Now, both sides there is destruction. So Bani Israel say to Musa, we are better off by doing the work of Pharaoh, being slaves. At least we were happy where we were. Now you have put us here, now there's doom in front and doom behind. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, after all those events that happened in his life, him going to the mountain, him putting the staff in front of the magicians, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command? First thing is, Quran is witness to this. Musa alayhi salatu wasalam on his lip, the attention of the believer and the mindset of the believer and the direction of the believer will, in the times of problems and in the times of halat, difficulties and situations and conditions, will always go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I straight away, without any, in Urdu say jijak, without any hesitation, he says to the people of the Bani Israel, fear not, my Allah is with me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take a way out. And this level of optimism and husni dhan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is required by the believer in all instances. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this deen to reap the benefits of this world and akhirat. Allah has given us deen. So Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is going. Now all those experiences have happened. But what does he do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something very contrary to what has happened in the past. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Musa, you know that stuff? Hit it on the water. This is contradictory to human logic. Ya Allah, on tour it became a snake. at the time of the magicians. Ya Allah, it became a snake, it swallowed all the snakes. Now, Pharaoh that behind me and water in front of me, and you saying whack it on the water? What's gonna happen? The Zen. Because the human being, the mind psychologically remembers the experiences of the past. Because we did this, we are not programmed, or we do not need to get programmed to look at experiences and events and situations and conditions. Those conditions have come from Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the being who will also remove those conditions. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes 12 pathways for the 12 tribes of Bani Israel. So our elders say that staff, you hear in bayans from our elders in the past, that staff wasn't hit on the water, that staff was hit on the intellectual capacity of humankind until the day of judgment. That where you see benefit coming from, benefit is not coming from there. Where you see harm coming from, harm is not coming from there. Benefit and harm in actual essence is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Respected brothers, these are the lessons we have to make effort on, and we have to discuss these again and again. Again and again, because these are those avenues which help the Sahaba radiallahu anhum make their iman. If you look at the ayat of Makkah, the Makki surah, the ayat that came down in the time of Makkah, all the time talking akhirat risalat. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, first thing he made effort on the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, on the hearts of Sahaba, is iman. When we will make effort on iman, respected brothers, then because of our connection and where we attribute things happening from, because of that, that will give us the power to act upon those commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that have come from the ghaib. We will make effort on the ghaib. The ghaib is unseen. We cannot see, we cannot feel it, we cannot hear it. The ghaib is unseen. So those commands that have come through the unseen, wahi. Everything we do in deen, the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wahi. It's come through the channels of the unseen. So those things that have come through the unseen will only be able to practice in its complete essence when we make effort on the unseen. The stronger our belief on the unseen will make us act upon those commands that have come from the unseen. This is why elders say, in Urdu, in Muzakara of Iman, they say that if a person, without making effort on Iman, puts the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in front of an individual, this is like throwing a seed at a rock. बगैर ईमान मेहनत किए हुए आदमी अल्लाह का हुक्म पेश करे, गोया ऐसा है कि बीज को चट्टान के ऊपर मारो. That seed is not going to grow, is not going to fertilize. Because to fertilize that seed, we have to irrigate, we have to plow the land, put the seed in the soil, water it, fertilize it. And after that, that seed will grow. Sahaba radiallahu anhum, 9 to 13 years, they nurtured their iman. They nurtured their iman to such a level that Aisha radiallahu anha, she says, to the effect that those commands that came down in Medina, if they were to come down in Makkah, we wouldn't be able to accept those commands. Why? Because none of us has the istidad and the capability. Iman is that thing which will give us the capability of accepting the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether the Fajr Salat is 4 o'clock in the morning, whether the 10,000 pounds goes to waste or becomes lost, whether that beautiful woman is walking in the market streets and we lower our gaze, this is all possible when Iman is high. Mahol, environment, it helps. But sometimes even the mahol and the environment, we hear many instances where in the most difficult of circumstances, because of the level of Iman and because of the fikr and the worry and concern of that individual, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that individual fulfill the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the most extreme of conditions. Because the da'i, the inviter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this da'i, he always worries about making his environment. This ummah is the ummah which is on dawat. With ibadat, yes, it's important we make ibadat. We do the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that abid, many an instance we see that people coming in the salah, when they are in the journey, they will let go of their salah. What happened when there was environment? The order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was there. When there was no environment, then what happened to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This in Urdu, elders say, ye rasmi deen hai, ye riwaji deen hai. This is customary deen. This is cultural deen. Rasmi riwaji deen se koi Allah ka wada nahi hai. There is no promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on culture and on just practice like that. So the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be fulfilled according to the level of iman we have. When the level of iman is strong, when we will talk about akhirat, qabr, hashar on a day-to-day basis, because the events of what are happening outside, in our jobs, in our homes, with our friends, with our family, with our wife, our workplaces, on the streets, in the marketplaces, on the trains, on the planes, everywhere, those things that are happening are eating away at our iman, and we are not realizing this. It's happening subconsciously. So this is why we have to make a continuous effort on our iman. When we will make a continuous effort on our iman, then those commands will become easy, and we will start seeing benefit from that. That's why the shopkeeper, at the time of salah, he will close his shop. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that these are real men. Who are the real men? Those ones, those people, those men who close their shop, neither merchandise nor sale beguiles them from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although they have customers, they see their benefit, and they see the sales. That benefit on those sales goes on to one side. They will see the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will close their shop and they will go and walk towards the masjid, offering their congregational prayer with Jamaat. The vastness in sustenance is dependent on the punctuality of salah. What is the punctuality of salah? The punctuality of salah is that at the time of adhan, the person is in the masjid before the adhan. Sayyid ibn al-Musayyib rahmatullah alayhi, we hear this many times in the books of Fadail, that so many times, even before adhan, for so many years he was in the masjid, he never seen the back of a musalli. For so many years they made Fajr and Isha with the same wudu. Obviously we're not going to do that, but these incidents and these stories have been mentioned in the books of Fadail to encourage us. Respected brothers, today we think that missing of salat is going to give us benefit. That missing of salat may give us that 30 pound from that taxi drive, which is a short Asr Maghrib, and there's not much time, and we've got a customer, and we'll drive that person from A to B. We might get that 30 pound in that pocket, but who knows what that 30 pound will bring on to us. So I respect brothers, we have to see what the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. What the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Peace and tranquility, hayat and tayyibah, is for the people of Iman and Aman. The success of this world is dependent on the people, or which is for the people of Iman and Aman. This is the condition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on these conditions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give respect, honor, dignity. We attribute peace and tranquility according to materialism. This person has a 6-figure salary. This person has a 7-figure salary. This person, he has this many properties. This person, he has this many vehicles. This person, he has this. We attribute the success of this world with the things of this world. The most basic needs of a human being: food, clothes, house, transport, and nikah. These are the 5 basic needs of a human being. Majority of Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they were very limited in these resources. And they got the best titles of success that of Jannati will get in Jannat after everything has happened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, is there anything you want? Say, no, we have got everything. I am pleased with you, you are never to be displeased with me. That certification Sahaba got in this world, and for that certification, these 5 basic necessities, they were very scarce, they had very little. What were they? फटे कपड़े पहनते थे, फिर भी इज्जत वाले थे, झोपड़ी में रहने वाले थे, फिर भी इज्जत वाले थे, गधे पे सवार होने वाले थे, फिर भी इज्जत वाले थे, सूखी रोटी खाते थे, फिर भी इज्जत वाले थे. This is Hafez Rahmatullah Alayhi, in his days, he used to narrate this many a time. He used to recall the poem of Maulana Yusuf Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi, that they used to live in huts, but they were respected. They used to wear ripped clothing, but they were respected. They used to ride upon donkeys and mules, they were respected. They used to eat dry bread, dry chapatis, but they were respected. Umar radiallahu anhu is going with his slave to get the keys of Baytul Maqdis. It's a famous story. What is it? Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah radiallahu anhu, when he comes, O Amirul Mu'mineen, you're going to become conqueror of this land. You should wear some libas like this. So he puts it on, he removes the slave from the mode of transportation. He starts riding himself. He rides for a bit, he looks at himself, no, I can't do this. Oh, Abu Ubaidah, if it was someone else, other than you who had suggested this, then I would have taken them to task. He takes it off again, and with that very weak form of transportation, with his slave on the back of the mode of transportation, and him walking with that ripped clothing, 11, 12 patches, he goes, and the people of the time, the leaders of the religious leaders of the time, they look at him, and they say, we can only count these many patches, where you want less. He lifts his armpit and he sees that there is a patch there as well. Respected brothers, our success, our benefit, everything of this world, our honor, our dignity, doesn't lie in any materialistic thing of this world. The nizam of Ghaib is something ajib. And the nizam of the Ghaib is what Sahaba tapped into. Yes, they were simple people. One Sahaba is there. He starts shaking something. He says, Subhanallah, this is a stone within a stone. In actual fact, he asked, what's this? He says, it's a chestnut. He's shaking the chestnut because of the noise inside. He's saying it's a stone within a stone. Patthar ke andar patthar. They were so simple people, they never knew what a chestnut was. But what they did know was how to shake the arsh of Allah. How was it that they put the lava back into the mountain with their own hands? Stop the zameen shaking, ground shaking with their tapping their stuff on the ground and saying, am I not doing justice on you? The lion is in the way, slap the lion, get out of the way. Never Nile rise up, one letter to the Nile from Amirul Mu'mineen. The river starts flowing. The nizam, the whole creation is for this human being. Allah has made this world for the human being. But when we will become Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Sahaba radiallahu anhum understood very well, better than us, and they were able to earn the world even better than us. And they knew the benefits and the harms even better than us. And they had the strength even more stronger than us to earn this world. But where is real benefit? Where is real harm? This was Sahaba radiallahu anhu understood this by us. But they understood this with sacrifice and struggle. This doesn't come easily. Sacrifice and struggle has to be made. When sacrifice and struggle, qurbani and mujahada is there, when we will make sacrifice and struggle for the sake of Allah and His deen, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will assist us, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make those things happen in our favor, even if the whole world is against us. This is why, respected brothers, we have to understand what effort. Go back into the advent of Islam, before the advent of Islam, and look at the conditions of them people who were the inhabitants of Hijaz, who were the inhabitants and the people who had the keys of the Kaaba. 360 idols in the place which is supposed to be Baytullah.
doing tawaf of the Kaaba naked, licking blood of the ground, eating dead meat, fighting for generations on end. Why? One tribe's camel drank water before another tribe, and leaving it in their will. We have a war with that tribe, battle with that tribe. You continue after my death. No superpower of the world. What use is there to rule over these people, burying their own daughters alive? Such acts of barbarity that the world can't even understand today. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he made effort of 23 years. It took him 23 years to take them out from the depths of ignorance and put them into the height of success, glory that no group of human beings will reach until the day of judgment. This is that effort we gather on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, on a yearly basis, on a continuous basis. The problems and issues of this world, collectively and individually. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept the solution of these individual and collective problems in His Mubarak deen and the effort of deen. This ummah, when it was on deen and the effort of deen, there was no stopping and there was no resistive force. Everyone had to put their hands up and they had to obey. When we have left deen and we left the effort of deen, then what will happen? People will make mockery out of us and we won't be able to do anything. We won't be able to utter a statement. The issue is not about the world. The issue is about ourselves. The conditions that come in this world, primarily, those conditions are happening. Why? Because it's according to the amal of the believers. Rasulullah SAW going up into the skies, he sees two pillars of light, one going up, one coming down. He asked Jibreel Islam, what is this going up, what is this coming down? He says, this is the amal of the believers. He said, these are the amal of the believers. Not the amal of humanity, the amal of the believers going up. And what is coming down? The decision from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accordingly. Our missing salah is bringing the 40 houses to the left, 40 houses to the right, 40 houses to the front, 40 houses behind. 160 homes are being affected by one Bay Namazi. One Bay Namazi being affecting 160 homes. And if this Bay Namazi is in our own home, how much nahusat is coming in our homes? There is a solution, it's there, we can get it. We just have to make a little bit of effort. We just have to make a little bit of sacrifice. We just have to make a little bit of qurbani, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ready to give. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always given. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always give to the people. And He has His decision. And the decision is noted in His word, His book of Quran. Book of Allah is Quran. The izzat, respect is for Allah and His Rasul and the believers up until the day of judgment. But respect, brothers, we have to understand that this deen is there for our ease. And to bring ourselves onto complete deen is what is required. And to bring ourselves onto complete deen, we have to make sacrifice and struggle for this. How much sacrifice and struggle? This is where we have to understand what our responsibility is. This is where we have to understand where our responsibility is, what level of responsibility we hold, and what level of responsibility we are accountable for. Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they understood that this deen to be taken not only for themselves, their families, their streets, their localities, their villages, their towns, their countries, the whole world. They understood not only for the whole world, they understood this deen is for the entire globe, for the entire humanity up until the day of judgment. For this they made sacrifice and struggle. They put the whole of humanity in front, and whatever they had to give, they gave. This is why we see in the story of Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he gave everything for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when it came for the time to provide a sweet dish, and his wife said, radiallahu anha, that I'm going to save some money and make a sweet dish. What did he do? He took that sweet dish. It's very, when we listen to these stories in Tariq, we just gloss over it. We have to understand, we have to comprehend what level, what did they do? They sacrificed their sweet dish so me and you can make sajda today. That's the real thing. They sacrifice. Why? Because this wealth is for the ummah. It needs to be used for Alai Kalimatullah. It needs to be used to make the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala high in the globe, for that my family can stay without the sweet dish. Their desires were buried in the graves with them. Everyone has tamanna. Everyone has desires. Mujhe ye chahiye, I want this, I want that. Family, there is requirements. Children, there is requirements. But the mahol in Medina was such that the children, the young, the women, the men, every group of people, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that deen to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how can that deen spread throughout the four corners of the globe? For this we will make every sacrifice possible. We will widow our wives, we will sacrifice, we will make our children yatim, we will do everything what we have in our capacity and our capability, so that what? 1500 years ago, 1500 years after this, there will be a people, and for them deen has to reach them. Not just 1500 years, up until the day of judgment, but I'm just giving a time frame. 1500 years after, there's going to be a people, and we have to make deen reach there. See, the person giving the sacrifice will be given, but the asrat and the effects of that sacrifice will be felt somewhere. Somebody somewhere making the sacrifice, somebody somewhere will be getting hidayat and guidance. So we have to put ourselves on this band. Why? Because there is going to be a ummah is coming after us as well. Me, my children, my grandchildren, my nasal to come. There is people going to come after us. And for deen to reach until the day of judgment is most definitely going to happen, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he prophesied, and he says, deen, this way of life, this deen, he says to his daughter on one occasion, is going to reach every baked and unbaked house. So most definitely, this deen is going to reach every baked and unbaked house. But fortunate is that person who is utilized for this, who becomes the mean to take deen and to spread deen until the end of time. This is why, respect brothers, we have to understand what level of responsibility we have, what level of accountability we have, and how much we will be questioned on this responsibility. It's not about how I can enjoy myself and become selfish. It's about how I can give this health, wealth and time is not mine. This health, wealth and time is the distribution from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this. It's an amanat. And this health, wealth and time has to be utilized for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sahaba radiallahu anhum went one step further. Do you know their jazbat and their desires? Their desires and jazbat, even then they sacrificed for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was nothing more beloved to Sahaba radiallahu anhum than the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To live amongst and in the midst of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the biggest ni'mat, was the biggest blessing they had. Sometimes they would go home, come back, go home, come back, go home, come back. Oh Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I just wanted to see your face. I looked at the moon, I looked at yourself, I looked at the moon, I looked at yourself. And what happens? Well, the moon, your face is more beloved than them. They will have to go. The love they had for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we cannot understand, we cannot comprehend. But even that company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sahaba even sacrificed that. Muaz ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu is going towards Yemen. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going towards him. And when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going with him, he says to Muaz radiallahu anhu, "Oh Muaz, when you come back, you may not see me, you may see me in my grave." This was more difficult to Sahaba radiallahu anhu to leave their orchards of dates behind, to leave their, to orphan their children, to widow their wives, to make losses, personal losses. They did this. Why? Because the company of Rasulullah was so beloved. Even that they had to. Why? Because there was a bigger picture, bigger responsibility being paid in front of them. And that responsibility was to take deen throughout the four corners of the globe. If we want this deen to remain in our lives, our children's life, our grandchildren's, and our progeny to come until the day of judgment, we will also have to make sacrifice. The biggest challenge we have today is the challenge of people leaving the fold of Islam. What level of accountability do we have? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will question us on the day of judgment, legion upon legion of Sahaba will come. One won't have an arm, another won't have a leg, another's zaban and tongue will be cut off, someone won't have, body will be in pieces. All this will be happening in front of us. And what will we say? What response will we give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is a responsibility, it is a work, it is a need, it is a zarurat. The biggest need of this time is to strive in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our health, wealth, time, energy, resources, salahiyat, our heart and mind, put everything in front. Why? Because there are so many people on the border of Islam. How are we going to stop them? Amongst our communities, within our mile ranges from our own villages and our towns, and our own streets, the picture is very, respected brothers, we have to be optimistic. We have to have hope. We have the solutions to bring the Ummah on the right path. But we are not utilizing these resources. We also know that these are the sources in which deen will become alive in the lives of people. But these resources and sources are being neglected. Why? Because we have become selfish. What is selfish? Or how selfish have we become? I have certain amount of bank balance. I have this house. I have a continuous income. My children are like this. My whole life is set. My wife, my children, my job, my house. That's it. What about the whole Ummah? If there is fire outside and you say, is that someone else's house? It's not at my house. The guy lives a few doors away from me. What's going to happen to that fire? It's going to take your house down as well. The fire of religiousness is spreading at a pace where we don't have any time, any respite to just sit back and relax. The pace in which evil is making effort is uncontrollable. We have this as a tool. The striving, the naqlu harkat of the people in the path of Allah. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will utilize to spread hidayat and guidance. Tabligh in essence is taklif. We have to put ourselves in difficulty for something to happen. But those sources of difficulty and those losses won't be losses, they'll become benefit. Harun Rashid had a son. We hear this story. What happened to his son? He left everything, he went. And on Saturday morning he used to work. The person who employed him, he narrates his story and he says that in a few hours he used to do the work of 10 days. In a few hours, he used to do the work of 10 days. In 1 anna or whatever he's written as a sheikh in the commentary, said this much currency, and with that money he is fulfilling his needs for the week. When we will give for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will put barakat in our time. Those things that were a week long will become a day. When we will give in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will return most definitely at least minimum 10 times guaranteed and 700 times. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of our qurbani and our sacrifice. He can take the work from ababil, He can take the work from ants, He can take the work from hudhud, He can take the work of not us, disbelievers. If you don't come unto deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we will replace you with a different one. Who will do the effort? Allah is not in need of us. But when we will give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we will rise and make effort for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever sacrifice we will make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not take. He hasn't, or He never taken, He took the sacrifice of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam. How is He going to take sacrifice from us? Ibrahim alayhi salam is sacrificing his son, he's trying to sacrifice. Ismail alayhi salam, what happened in place of his son? The ram was put. Allah will give something better, will change the conditions, will give something. We will realize this as a loss at this moment in time, but most definitely Allah is going to give. Respect brothers, that success of this world and the success of hereafter and the murder of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most definitely with this nation. At the start I mentioned two stories, two incidents about Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the cave and Bani Israel with Musa alayhi salam. In the story of Musa alayhi salam, two Nabi are mawjood. One Rasul, one Nabi. Musa alayhi salam and his brother Harun alayhi salam. What did Musa alayhi salatu wasalam say? My Allah is with me. All Bani Israel are there. My Allah is with me. What did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say in the cave? These are the words of Quran. I am not saying anything. This is an exact story. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in the cave that fear not, Abu Bakr, Allah is with us. Because the help and the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with this ummah. Whatever help and assistance for which Sahaba radiallahu anhu is with the ummah until the end of time. Allah has not changed. But why is it? There is a sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from the ummah. When we will give this, we were in Kakril once. And one brother was giving Musaqqa with us. Mawlana Yusuf Sahib Rahmatullah alayhi, he extracted one story from the Quran. When he is going in the desert, with his wife, with the goats, wife is expecting, it's cold, he's going towards the mountain. So when he is going towards the mountain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obviously gave him the word. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "O Musa, you have to go to Pharaoh." What? Pharaoh? How? He's after mine. I'm going to get killed. He summoned me to death. No, you have to go to Pharaoh. Because when? Not after you look after your family, not after you look after your goats, not after you look after this, not after you look after that. You're going now. Wife, child, wealth, goats, nakat, cash, 4, and 5th, for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When these 5 things will come into effect, until the end of time, Allah's help will be with this ummah, and the mightiest of tyrants and the mightiest of things will be obscurance and hurdles for Islam. Allah will wipe them clean from the surface of the globe. And Allah will make them lesson for humanity until the day of. This is why Pharaoh, what happened? Musa al-Islam did these 5 things. Left wife, left children, left wealth, went nakat, cash, and went for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah destroyed Pharaoh. This is what the ummah has to come on to. Most definitely Allah's help is with us. But the way to receive this help is what Sahaba radiallahu anhum did. And this is the work of Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam. This is why we have to make struggle. So from this majma, from this gathering, who is ready to sacrifice? Look, Don't look right, don't look left. Don't look our conditions. Everyone who has gone for 4 months, everyone who has gone in the path of Allah, everyone has wife, kids, job, conditions, everything. We have to go in our conditions. When we will live in our conditions, then we will realize, it's not me controlling.
Inshallah.
Everything is in the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah accept, Allah make easy. Brothers, give intention, who is ready for 4 months from this month?